Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. Good to see you.
Happy Monday, Dr. Paul.
Oh, very good. And I guess we have a couple subjects to talk about today, but dealing with foreign policy. And, we've touched on a couple occasions already about the war on sanctions. And, the Senate passes it 97-2, and it looks like it's going to sail through. But all of a sudden, and we brought the subject up, it still has to go to the House, and there's some resistance there. It's not probably exactly coming from all our kind of people, but it's for various reasons, but it isn't sailing through, and there's a bit of a fight going on. And somebody got a special interview this week, and he's getting to be well known. He's not 40 years old yet, but he's been fighting in a couple wars, and he sort of reminds me of a Tom Cotton type member of Congress. And he was in Congress for 2 years before I left, and that's Kinzinger from Illinois, Adam Kinzinger. And he is determined to stir up, a super antagonism toward Russia, and he cannot stand the fact that there might be a softer approach, and he doesn't like Trump. We're not Trump champions, no. but it's for the reason that Trump is not hawkish enough. But he did point out that Trump's positions, what he does is not all that bad. When he sends 59 Tomahawks into Syria and certain things like that, he likes that. Of course, then there's this issue of gas. Whether there was actually gas released recently in April, and we've had some people look into this, but. This is ongoing, but there may be signs that the monolith against Russia and Assad, as symbolized by a 97-2 vote, maybe that's starting to crack.
Yeah, and Kinzinger, this is a Politico profile. Of course, they always do fawning profiles of the real super hawkish guys. But he said, quote, he's going to raise holy hell if the House doesn't pass these Russia sanctions. He's furious about it. He's angry with Trump. This is astonishing. He's a Republican. This is what he said essentially about his own president. I'm no fan of Obama, but I'd rather have him as president than Putin. So was he saying that his own president from his own party is somehow Putin?
Yeah, but you know why he really doesn't like Putin? He's killing his own people. Yeah. Well, I don't know exactly what he's referring to. I know Putin is no angel, and yet when you think of how many people that our foreign policy has killed, we've talked about that so often. With all the collateral damage and the kind of killing that goes on. Not 10 or 15, just in the last week or two, there were 400 or 500 more civilians killed. So this is just such hypocrisy, but it's mainly to promote a policy, a hawkish policy, and it's back to, Assad has to go, that policy. And to me, it's amazing how, the liberal Democrats, who are supposed to be anti-war like they were in the 1960s, they're now, it looks like, maybe more hawkish than Republicans. And they're sort of, the Republicans for partisan reasons, but also they're not chomping on the bit at Trump for maybe having a softer stand with Russia, but the leadership in the neocon movement and in the deep state, that's a different story.
Yeah, but I think things are starting to shift slightly on the Democrat side. The Hill ran a story a couple of days ago about how rank and file Democrats are in the House especially, are getting very frustrated with this Russia obsession. They quoted Tim Walz, a liberal Democrat from Minnesota. He said, I did a 22-county tour of my district, and nobody is focused on the Russia stuff. They just got stung badly in Atlanta, where they lost this election. They were supposed to win because they were focused on it. And I think there's a slight rebellion going on within the ranks against Pelosi and Schumer, who continue to push this. Pelosi said, what do the Russians have on Donald Trump earlier this month? So I think there is a slight shift because it's hurting them at the ballot box.
Yeah, and I think that means that the system may have a little bit of life left to it, and things can be changed. And I think there are some people who are having an influence, on this. Seymour Hersh has some influence, and also Oliver Stone.
Yeah.
He's had some influence. He's talked about it, which is more objectivity than promoting a very biased position. But of course, that's not what they get credit for. They don't come along and say, to a Hersh, well, you're the most unbiased reporter, investigative reporter ever, so therefore we'd like to have your material. What do? Because he takes an unbiased position, he is so biased against the nonsense, the propaganda of both parties. So he becomes the enemy, and I understand he's done some work recently. He had trouble even getting it published, even though there were some people that had spent some money to help him do the investigation.
It's amazing, he had an article over the weekend. Everyone's talking about it today. And essentially, you would expect, it's a blockbuster article. It absolutely damages Trump completely. But it also damages the pro-war narrative. He had to go to Germany to get it published. Nobody in the Washington Post, New York Times, here's a blockbuster from a Pulitzer Prize winning writer, investigative reporter. Nobody in the U.S. will touch it. And the article essentially says that, based on his intelligence contacts, that the U.S. knew, the Trump administration knew that this was not a chemical attack in April, and he fired the Tomahawks anyway. And it's a blockbuster. Think about it. Nobody wants to touch an article like that.
But isn't it strange that Trump, he's back and forth. And I think it's the worst position to have, because you never gain acceptance on one side and you lose it on the other side. But Trump is supposed to be, he's criticized mostly, by the Kinsingers and the others and the Senate. He's too soft on Russia, soft on Russia. But then he comes and he's too aggressive from our viewpoint. He's dropping bombs willy-nilly, and it sort of scares us to figure that if he'll do that, and he's influenced by that. And now what we're seeing is, it wasn't out of ignorance. I mean, it was material. There was material out there. It was information. Sort of reminds me of what was available to us that we could find before the Iraq War.
Exactly.
It was there by reputable people, but it's all politics. So it is a shame, and that's also the reason that it's difficult for the politicians know what to do, because some of them, well, we got to support him because he's our Republican leader and da-da-da. And other ones say, well, there's a limit to how far we can go, and they go back and forth. And if you had a principled president you didn't agree with, and he stuck to it, it wouldn't be so confusing. But if you have an unprincipled president, then on one day he looks like he wants to be the best friends with Russia, and the next day he said, we got to destroy them in Syria, and oppose everything they're doing there.
There's a danger here, and it's on multiple fronts. So from what Hersh reported, Trump did not get credible intelligence reports about the chemical attacks. He simply got his information from the news media. And the mainstream media ran with the narrative. Assad did it because they were programmed to do it. They never questioned it, and it wasn't based on any sources. And there's a difficulty, of an average CIA officer saying, Mr. President, you're totally wrong. That's a difficulty. But what does it say about our mainstream media that we are not being informed of actual facts? We're being propagandized. We take such pride in our free media, but it almost feels like we're in the Soviet Union in 1955.
Isn't it interesting, amazing that you can use the same lie twice? In 13 they did it too, and it was spilled out there by the media. They all supported it, and I imagine that if you can find some Americans who are really paying attention, probably most of them are going to say, oh yeah, the Russians used poison gas, and Assad used gas. Yeah. How often has it been, we got to get rid of Assad because Assad gassed his own people.
Yeah, it's a slogan,
Yeah, and it's totally a lie. And when you find out that our military will use this for doing something militarily, and then say, well, the generals have more leeway, and before you know it, they drop big bombs and they drop little bombs and they plan to drop more, and they stay involved like this. It's pretty darn dangerous. They're false flags, and there's a lot of lying going on, and there's a lot of propaganda. Just as Kinzinger is going here, he's out there out front and pushing it very hard, right in the political system, and he gets the attention, and Hersh doesn't get any. McCain, he's on TV all the time. They who promote this issue, and it satisfies the media, they get all the attention.
They get on TV, yep.
But if you tell the truth, what happens to Ed Snowden for telling the truth?
Yeah.
So it's a tough job. But you put in some statistic that maybe it's not working, which is very interesting that the Democrats may not be winning on this issue. They didn't win in Georgia, so that's pretty good.
The rank and file are getting frustrated. There was another article in The Hill, strangely enough, but it was a Harvard-Harris poll from June 19th to 21st, so a very recent poll. A couple of numbers are going to be surprising to you, I think. But I think the Dems should be looking at this, and I think they are. 64% of voters said the investigations into Trump are hurting the country. 73% say they're concerned that the Russian probes have caused Congress to lose focus. That includes 68% of Democrats. And 62% of all voters surveyed said there's no hard evidence to support the collusion with Russia thing. So this is falling dead among the electorate, and I think the Democrats are getting frustrated with their leadership.
The old saying was, whether people vote from their hearts or from their head. And I always argued that they vote from their bellies.
Yeah.
And it was said by others that it's the economy, stupid.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's almost always the economy. Other issues, come in, but maybe this stuff is a little too esoteric from them. I have trouble keeping up with all of the investigations. What are they doing? How are they going to stop? And who has the authority to do it? And why do we have this many authority that are in a position where they're inside the in the government, and they're probably working on a coup of the president. So it just goes on. It's amazing that they can continue to do this.
But Congress won't take a few minutes to debate whether or not we should be attacking Assad's forces in Syria when they're fighting ISIS. No, there's no time for that. More probes, more curlicues.
Yeah, well, I think this is going to be around here for a bit. I think that we may be seeing a political shift where the people who are unemployed or underemployed or maybe real people that they don't ever count or pay attention to, and maybe there's still that concern out there, and this gets too esoteric because it's hard to understand, and there's so many stories told back and forth that they're not getting that interested. So maybe there will be a shift, and we'll see, because the bellwether on this might be who is the Democratic leader in the House in about 6 months from now.
Yeah.
Are they going to do something soon, or are they going to wait until the next election? Are they going to, see what happens? But it's pretty amazing that she survives it all. So what do you think is going to happen here? How would you summarize this?
Well, I would like to think that the Hersh article will get a wider reading. It's very embarrassing and it's very sad, and it should be a disgrace that he had to go to a foreign press to get this published. But there is a side article that's a conversation between a military operative on the field, on the ground, loading the Tomahawks, and an intel advisor. I encourage people to read that exchange. It's full of very strong words because the guy is literally terrified that we know we're launching these and we know it's a lie. It's very powerful stuff.
Yeah, it does get confusing. I have to work at trying to keep up with all these things going on and who's telling the truth. That's rare. who's promoting the lies and why. But I think that right now it makes our job easy, which is our job is to present the case for non-interventionism and a pro-American defense policy where we just mind our own business. And this is much easier, to figure out what to do. And the solution from our viewpoint in the Middle East, Syria, why don't we just give it to Russia? they're already there. They have a base there. It's sort of like if somebody was trying to take Guantanamo from us and they were not doing well, why don't we just let the Americans have Guantanamo? Something, like that. But we don't. We just go on and continue to do this. But the principal argument of non-intervention is mind our own business, save some money, protect our liberties here at home. Believe me, there's a lot of merit to this, and that's what our goal should be. And when we see the cracks in the dike there where our views are coming through, I think we like to point them out, but we still have a big job ahead of us because there are a lot of hot spots in the world, and I think that one of these days, one of those may get out of hand, but we'll do our best to keep you up to date on these. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report, and please come back soon.